bread is the staple food of the Jordanian diet. Although most of the bread eaten in Jordan today is baked in commercial bakeries, some women continue to bake bread in traditional ways at home in a handmade clay oven called a taboon, plural tawabin. This film documents traditional taboon bread making observed in villages in northern Jordan in fall 2012 and describes the taboon, its use, and its history. The bread dough is usually prepared inside the house. The basic recipe calls for white flour, salt, yeast, and water, although sesame, black nigella seeds, turmeric, and sugar are sometimes added. All of these ingredients are available in village grocery stores. None of the bakers used measuring tools when mixing the bread dough. The baker mixes the ingredients together in a bowl and kneads the dough for approximately 10 minutes. A typical batch of dough uses about 3 kilograms of flour, which will make 15 to 20 loaves of bread. When the kneading is done, the dough is covered and left to rise for up to several hours. While the dough is rising, the baker lights the taboon by starting a fire inside of it. The taboon is located outside the house, usually in a dedicated taboon room, a small structure that protects the taboon, its fuel, and associated tools and equipment, as well as the baker during cold and rainy months. The baker lights the taboon using straw, wood chips, twigs, or jift, the remains of olives that have been pressed for oil. Olive trees are widely cultivated in the region, and most of the families interviewed use their own olives for fuel and cooking oil. After the fire is lit, the baker adds more fuel, mostly pruned branches and jift, in order to heat the taboon's walls and floor in preparation for baking. After the dough has risen and the taboon is deemed hot enough, typically 1.5 hours after it is lit, the baker takes the bowl of risen dough, trays, baskets, water, and olive oil into the taboon room. Prior to baking, the baker sweeps the ashes out of the oven through the side opening. Sometimes the women were observed wiping the floor with a wet cloth. The baker then flours a tray and divides the dough into equal balls. Some prefer to prepare the balls in the house and take a tray of risen dough balls to the taboon room. The baker then flattens the dough balls on the tray with her knuckles and rubs them with olive oil or water. Then she works the dough into thin discs with her hands and applies olive oil or water as needed. When the dough discs are between 25 to 35 centimeters in diameter, they are slapped onto the taboon floor for baking. As the bakers themselves attest, it takes skill and practice to insert the dough into the taboon correctly and avoid burns. The baker uses a stick or a metal rod to move the bread around inside the taboon to ensure even baking. She then places a lid on top of the taboon in order to retain heat and prepares the next few loaves. The baker occasionally lifts the lid to check the progress of the baking, and she manipulates the baking loaves and adds fuel to the fire as needed. Each bread loaf bakes for approximately 4 to 6 minutes, and it can take 1 to 1.5 hours to bake a whole batch. When it is done, the baker lifts the bread out of the taboon and places it in a basket or tray. Some bakers use their bare hands to remove the bread from the oven. Some use a piece of cloth to protect their hands. Others use a stick or a metal rod. Many bakers hold the bread close to the flame before removing it. This burns the edges a bit and gives the bread a crispier texture. On holidays and special occasions, special bread is baked in the taboon. Extra olive oil and turmeric are often added to the dough. And prior to baking, the discs are pressed into a clay mold in order to create a decorative pattern on the baked bread. When the day's baking was complete, most of the tawabin observed were closed and left to cool. The baker then took the bread and other supplies back into the house, and some of the bread was eaten immediately while it was still hot. Most of the bakers observed baked every 2 or 3 days and stored bread in the refrigerator or freezer. Some baked only on holidays and special occasions. Only 2 bakers baked every day. The entire bread-making process can take 3 to 4 hours from start to finish. It is highly skilled work that is labor-intensive, repetitive, and done in a hot and smoky environment. Taboon bread is eaten with every meal. It has an appealing, chewy texture and a smoky flavor that cannot be found in commercially baked bread.